Serial Box, we started a few years ago, and it's basically a live one-take music performance project where we would invite bands in. We'd have 5 or 6 cameras, gear you'd find on a movie set, audio equipment you'd find in a recording studio, and we would do these sessions basically where we'd have bands play a more acoustic version of one of their songs, and we would multi-track it and multicam capture it and create these kind of, relatively elaborate performance videos. Kind of as a larger concept, we've kind of recently started doing truly live streams of some of our sessions, and then that has kind of led us into really wanting to tell a longer form version of the Serial Box story, so that it's not just the performance, but that we can do interviews and documentary segments with bands and kind of change up the way we do one takes, and that kind of by combining all those things together, we realized like we have the makings of a TV show, basically. And so that's what kind of Serial Box has been pushing towards over the last couple years of the project, as we've kind of acquired the skills to attempt to tell a story in a longer form while kind of still basing it off of these one-take performances. I think any kind of side project or passion project, it falls in the like frog boiling in water analogy, I think is a very accurate one. So you kind of jump into it and everything's cool and it's not that much work, and then like the kind of byproduct of other people getting into it and the kind of scale and the scope of the project kind of getting bigger and bigger is that it requires an enormous amount of work, an enormous amount of time, and an enormous amount of team building to kind of put the crews and the teams together to pull these kinds of projects off. And I will be totally honest, for the first several years, they were completely free. Like everyone worked for free. The bands, I wanted from the very beginning to not have any financial relationship with the artists that we were working on, because I didn't want that to kind of muddy the creative, because we were trying to accomplish something that didn't necessarily, I couldn't explain it to someone, I just knew how I wanted to show people. And so I didn't want the like, I'm paying you, now do what I say kind of relationship to be involved, especially at the beginning. That's been really kind of an amazing process as well, because if you're not paying people in any direction, then everyone needs to take something away from the project very specifically. That has informed the way that we put our crews together and the way that we invite collaborators into the project, because I want a camera operator to be able to say, when he sees the final video, he's like, dude, that one amazing shot from that to that was totally me. Like, I want to make sure that people feel like the people that work on this with us feel like they have very specific ownership of these elements, that they have something that they can be proud of and something that can help them go out and get work. My general rule for Serial Box is that we have one more camera than band members. That generally means 4 to 6 cameras at any given time. And then I will have a technical director who is operating the switcher. Even on a capturing for post session, usually we'll switch it just to make sure that it feels right. That because you can have a lot of great coverage, but the difference between having a pile of cool looking footage and an actual edit is huge. So I'll have a technical director who's just kind of taking the shots as they come up, making sure that it feels right, the pacing's right. I will usually stand and watch monitor, and then we have an audio team that's usually a lead engineer. Our mix engineer will also usually come and just kind of hear how it sounds on set, to get a sense of kind of where he's going to be going in post-production. And then usually 3 or 4 production assistants who sometimes will help with audio depending on what needs to happen. Sometimes they'll help with lighting, help with set, run cables, that kind of stuff. So usually I would say our crew is about 15 to 20 on a normal Serial Box shoot. When I'm standing at the monitor watching shots as they're coming in and kind of directing the operators, I'm not telling them what to shoot. I'm giving them a general assignment saying, I want, from your angle, we need, this kind of general look and feel. And we'll usually pick areas that they're kind of covering. And then I just let them do their thing. And I'll step in on the headset when I feel like, a lot of times, because our operators obviously can't see what the other person is shooting, And so one guy may be on a close-up of the singer, and the other guy who's been bouncing around ends up on a close-up of the singer at the same time. And for me, that's not helpful. Like, I don't need 2 shots of the singer that look matched. I need options at any given time. I want to have multiple options when I get into post-production. And so that's really my job, is just to kind of guide the coverage, making sure that key moments, like I know there's going to be, yesterday there's a couple parts where there's a violin solo, so I need to make sure that my guy who's got the best shot of the violin solo isn't off getting a close-up of the drummer, and because he's, you know, doesn't know that the violin, it's my job to know the violin solo is coming up. So I'll say, hey man, violin solo is coming up, go ahead and settle over there, and then I'll kind of let the other guys do their thing so that I know when we get into post that right on that downbeat, right when that violin solo starts, I've got a great looking shot of it that I can cut to. The camera, the kind of cameras that we use don't matter. The thing that matters the most is the number of them, and ideally the number of them that are matched. So when we started, we were using 5Ds because that's what everybody had. Our entire first season was shot with 5Ds, and almost half of our second season was shot with 5Ds. We've done 25 kind of episodes at this point of these performance videos, and I would say only in the last year have we used not 5Ds to do these shoots. My general rule is if you have mixed cameras, we try and put similar cameras on similar kinds of shots. So if I have 3 FS100s and 2 5Ds, then I'll make sure that my 2 close-up cameras are 5Ds and all the rest of them are FS100s, so that our close-up shots feel the same and our wide shots feel the same, and that kind of tricks your brain into feeling like it's all one camera. The main concern with any camera is what is the dynamic range, and how dark can I shoot it? Because I tend to like to shoot pretty dark, and so with the 5D, we just had to make sure that our dynamic range was very compressed, maybe 8, 9 stops of light between the darkest places and the brightest places. And so now we're shooting primarily with Canon cinema cameras. Yesterday we had 5 C300s and 1 C100. And so with those, we've been using them long enough now that we kind of know we've got a little bit more latitude and our lighting will reflect that. But we still want it to have a very distinct look. It's just how much wiggle room do I have in terms of shadow detail and highlight detail. So when we were shooting 5Ds, we were recording internally. When shooting FS100s, recording internally. We shot a handful of series on Blackmagic. We did a few sessions raw, and it was just an astronomical, it's like 3 or 4 terabytes of data for one 5-song session. It was insane. That was not a sustainable path forward when you're generating like massive amounts of data like that. So what we do though is we have a Hyperdeck Pro disc recorder, basically, that all of the cameras are running through Blackmagic switchers and then into a recorder, and we'll record our program feed, which is what the technical director is selecting is the line cut, basically. And we record that for reference, so that a lot of times I'll drop that into my timeline when I'm doing a session when I'm going to edit later, just to kind of remember the flow of the day and take a look at that. See, that might have done some of the heavy lifting for me. I may not have to start from scratch. Sometimes it's best to just start over, sync your cameras up, and run a multi-clip in Premiere. Locations from the beginning have been the absolute most complicated thing about this project, for sure. I didn't ever want us to do these sessions in a recording studio that kind of already existed, and in way cooler studios than I would ever have access to. And so we always wanted to kind of bring the music into places that were not necessarily ideally suited for recording music. And so the main thing was I had to kind of convince my audio guys that I wasn't trying to like make their lives miserable. But at the beginning, it was all like local places. It just is going around town and finding cool places and like making friends with the management there and saying, it's the same as trying to build your crew. Like I think of building locations in the same way, which is how can we partner with them? What could they potentially get out of it? Whether that be their employees get to come hang out while we're shooting and it's really cool and they enjoy it, or we'll, mention that they let us shoot there or whatever. It's really just about kind of like going around town and finding spots that look interesting. And I'll find that we kind of tend to gravitate towards a certain style. And then like for this Noah session, it's a dramatic departure from kind of the direction we have been, which is this like draping backdrops and like everything's very warm, like a dimmed tungsten light, and everything's like feels very like Hollywood Reporter, you know, this like editorial photography look. And for this one, we wanted to make sure that we did something quite different than that, which meant we had to build something. So we built 8x8 panels of pegboard and shot light through it, and it made it look like a very bizarre light bright set. I got into filmmaking on the kind of riding the 5D wave. Prior to the 5D coming out, I was a photographer, and then prior to that, I was an audio engineer. And so I hadn't quite landed on what I was wanting to do. I just knew that I loved making stuff, I loved a project schedule, I loved working with kind of a rotating group of people, but in terms of the thing that we were actually making, I hadn't quite arrived at what I wanted to be doing. And the 5D came out, and my first call was to friends of mine that shot video, because I got asked, like, you know, you have the camera, people are like, oh, you do photography, can you do video too? And one of my early mentors kind of said from the beginning, if someone asks you if you know how to do something, the answer is always yes, and then you use the time between saying yes and when you have to do it to figure out how to do it. And so I said yes to a video project, not knowing how to shoot video. And so my first call was to a handful of friends of mine that did shoot video, and we had a common studio space similar to this, where a handful of us like would store our gear and do our photo shoots, or some guys did some video stuff. And I got everybody together. I just happened to know musicians, so I said I can bring some musicians in. I actually know how to engineer as well, so I'll bring like a little small recording set in. We can just have the musicians play, and we'll have a bunch of cameras, because like, let's set this one up as a tight shot, and this one is a medium shot, and this one is a wide shot, and let's put this one on a little slider, so like, show me how the camera should be moving, and like, how can we cut between a wide shot and a tight shot? And it was literally can I get a bunch of people together that can kind of jumpstart my like education in filmmaking? And the reason that I asked musicians and the reason we recorded them is because from the beginning, I knew I'm asking people to give me something, whether that be time, knowledge, their attention, honestly. I wanted everyone to be able to walk away from that experience with something. So if the musicians are going to be sitting there for a couple hours while we're lighting and working on camera angles, then like, let's record something for them so that when they leave, they've got like this little recording or whatever. If you have something you want to accomplish and you're asking people to do it for low cost or for not a lot of money, you are the person who should be giving the most. And that'll be different on whatever the particular experience or the particular project or whatever that may be, but people should know that like no one will work harder than you will, and that no one will want this thing to succeed more than you will, and that end of the day, like if there's a burden to be carried, it is your job to carry that burden. So for me specifically, it's not extremely difficult to get a bunch of guys together to do the actual shoot. It's really fun. Like, musicians are here, we get all the toys out, like we get the lights out. It's really cool. Everybody has a great time. It's, at this point, other than people giving gear and time, like it's not a huge stressful job for camera operators and our audio engineers and everything. But then I've got a mountain of footage that I have to cut together, and I'm the one up at 3 o'clock in the morning doing the things that are like not really fun, you don't get a lot of benefit from, like, so I think that, I know that's maybe not super clear, but the point is you can't expect people to do the not fun stuff for free unless you have demonstrated that you are completely willing to do all of it on your own. And I think that kind of like willingness to be the guy and kind of carry the burden basically encourages people. They feel safe in the environment that you're creating, and they feel like they have something to contribute then, basically. I guess the landing in my mind is like, everybody thinks that shooting video is really, really fun all the time, and I would say it's really, really fun to accomplish it. There's a lot of times that it's not very fun, and so it's not incredibly difficult, I've found, to get the people to show up for the really fun stuff, as long as you're willing to do all the not fun stuff. How can you ask people to come work for little or no money if you're not willing to put in the time and the effort and the energy when nobody else cares? I think that's what it comes down to. It is much easier to pull off a music video than it is to pull off a cereal box in the kind of upfront preparation time. On the post-production side, way harder to make a music video than it is to make a cereal box, because by nature we're capturing an event as it's happening, and so for capturing a live event, all your work is front-loaded. The post is just kind of cleaning it up. And for a music video, I found that even if you think you're spending a lot of your time in prep, like it will pale in comparison to the amount of time you're going to spend in post. So they're kind of flip-flopped in that sense. For the Owl City music video, it's about coming up with the concept, basically. And for that song, which is such a highly narrative-driven song, the lyrics are so specific that you have to have a general action happening, because the specificity of the song will be kind of imposed upon whatever you show them. I wanted to have a loose action that kind of served as the foil for the lyrics, basically. That like them, it's a girl like digging in the ground. It's not that big of a deal, but then when on top of it, he's saying, my dad left me when I was a kid and my life is terrible, and like kind of that coming to grasp with the kind of seriousness of the situation with her dad or whatever, like then her digging in the ground like has a whole other meaning. And so it's like trying to come up with that kind of, she needs to be doing something specific, but kind of a generic, like a loose story, because all of the kind of heavy lifting is being done by the lyrics. I shot some of it on actual VHS. MusicBed did a profile on a guy named Jared Hogan, who I didn't know at the time, and the opening of this MusicBed film was like old VHS stuff that Jared had shot back when he was a kid, because he's one of those, like, I wanted to make movies since I was 8, and I've been shooting home video, whatever, which I kind of wish was my story, but it's not at all. Anyway, I saw that and it was really cool, and so I just like messaged him on I like reached out to him on Twitter and was like, hey man, do you think could we chat? And so we started emailing, and I was like, we haven't met, we have like some mutual friends, but not really. Like, could you send me that VHS camera that I saw I sent him a screenshot of like him holding up the VHS camera. I was like, could you send me this VHS camera? I have an idea for this video or whatever. And God bless the man, he put the thing in a box and sent it to me, which was incredible. Since then, he brought me out, we got to be friends, and now I went out and DP'd a short that he just directed, and then next week I go out to DP a music video that he's directing as well. So it's turned into this really cool relationship. But yeah, that VHS camera I saw like on a video, and then just messaged a total stranger to see if he would give it to me for a couple of days. I'm like I'm an emotional prepper more than like pull out every piece of gear and like, make sure everything works. And like, I feel like preparation is about like channeling nervous energy, essentially, because a lot of times there's nothing you can do until you're actually on set. And so however you can best manage your nervous, excited energy, I think is what to me makes for the most successful prepping. So for me, it's literally like internalizing the story. So I tend to shoot rather responsively, meaning we get into a spot and the way the actors are moving, the way that the director is blocking, and then relative to what the scenes are in the script, like that's really how I can kind of start to see the coverage and see like how it might all fit together and how I would want to try and shoot something. I'll definitely kind of go through the script, but I go through the script in my head. And I go out and take long walks or a run or something, listening to music that I feel like a lot of times that's one thing I'll ask directors for. A lot of times, can you give me a playlist of songs that like for you kind of convey the tone that you want to accomplish? And I'll kind of be thinking over scenes in my head as I'm going on a run or something. And for me, that's kind of like, if I can internalize the emotion of what we're trying to accomplish in a particular film or scene or moment, then that's kind of the most important prep work. The like picking the lenses, setting the cameras up, making sure that we've got the gear that we need, that's the easy stuff. That's not hard, because I feel like there's plenty of people who are super into that kind of stuff, and a lot of times you'll get to work with people who are super into that kind of stuff, and so that to me is not prep. That's like just getting your tools ready, but the prep for me is that kind of like absorbing the story, I guess. And part of it's self-selecting. It's like I'm not a huge like storyboard guy. I use storyboards with the director not as a like, okay, so you want me to shoot this shot, but it lets me know what does the director want to accomplish. I kind of can get the information that I need about what does the director actually want, because a lot of times it's like we said, like you have a plan, but the plan is really what gets you started. So I know that most likely this storyboard is the director's plan of how to get to the final idea, but that he knows, we know, she knows, we're gonna diverge from that plan at some point. So for me, like using it like a Bible is not helpful. You know, that's not the point of it. The point of it is that we can all get together and go, okay, this is what we're trying to accomplish as a team, and like let's now get on set and figure out how to get there. Internalize what you want to accomplish, and have an idea of how you want to get there, because I think starting is the hardest part. So if anything, having a plan is just to help you take those first few steps. And once you start taking those steps, the thing then that you have to do is be willing for your plan to begin to meander and wander and like not really work out how you thought it was, and to like not stress out about that. Like that's fine, that's normal for things to not be working out how you had, but maintain that idea, like what is it that you're wanting to accomplish on a large level. As long as you've really internalized what you're wanting to accomplish, what you're wanting to say, then it's a pretty exciting process to have your plans not work out how you thought they were going to, because you can still arrive at the same place, which is this feeling, this thing you want to say, but how you got there is generally way more interesting than what you would have come up with or planned, you know, had you sat there and worked every little detail out. So the most important thing for me, the first thing I ask when I walk on set, and the actor's there and the director's there, is here's what they're gonna say, but what are they gonna do? And that's blocking. Like where are the actors gonna be in this scene, and relative to that, then where am I gonna be in this scene and how is it gonna play out? Some directors say, I don't really care, like wherever the actor kind of feels like he needs to go. So a lot of times when that happens, there's pretty significant amount of rehearsal that happens, at which point I don't take a camera in, I just sit and watch them kind of work their way through the scene. And then the second thing I do is I look where the light is kind of already falling in the room, and I'll make a few immediate suggestions. Hey man, if it's not super important that you're standing over here when that happens, can you stand over here? Because that switching from one side to the other of a room literally may do 75% of the lighting for you. And so it's kind of this collaborative, like, how are we gonna move through this space? Where's the camera gonna go? And then like once you've kind of got the blocking down, then it's like, okay, we need to bring in a Kino. I want it up here. Let's kick something through the window over here. Maybe some negative fill on this side. Like, okay, we're ready to try something. When you start out in filmmaking, which is in fact the ultimate team sport, filmmaking is something that to truly accomplish something awesome is impossible to do by yourself. Quite literally. And unlike many mediums, if you're a writer, say, the only thing that's standing between you and your final novel is your own brain and your own attention and effort. Like, if you want to write a book, you can write a book. With a film, you could say, I want to make a film. Great, that is not going to happen without a bunch of other people. And so the thing that you have to do is be able to convey your idea to other people. That is the most important thing in filmmaking. Whether you're like a DP, it doesn't matter if you're an actor, director, if you're like a gaffer. Like, you have to be able to say, this is what I'm trying to accomplish in such a way that you motivate the other people who are the ones who can help you accomplish that you can convey that vision to the point that everyone is moving towards the same end goal. And I think it is really difficult because when you start out in filmmaking, a lot of times you are working by yourself. And that can never be the goal. Like, because you won't accomplish anything great if you're doing everything by yourself. It's just not possible. Like, and that's kind of like a hard thing to realize, but it's just true. So then the friction or the difficulty as you kind of move forward in filmmaking is when you get in a situation in which you have to convey your ideas. And I think for a director, that the most difficult transition point is when they start working with a DP, because they now have to convey their ideas to a very key collaborator who can take those ideas in a very different direction. I mean, you have to know what you want to accomplish and be very willing to let someone else's input and someone else's collaboration change the reality of how you're going to get there. Because, you know, people aren't robots. They're human beings who have their own ideas and emotions and their own life experience, and all of that will factor into the way that they shoot something, the way that they kind of set out to accomplish the goal. Even if you're trying to accomplish the same goal, no two people will do it the same way. And so you have to like be willing to let your key collaborators do it in a way. If you guys are still moving down the tracks at the same time, like, man, you gotta let them do some stuff that you wouldn't necessarily do yourself. And that kind of letting go of minutia control is difficult for people when they start kind of working with DPs for the first time. I have the benefit of directing a bunch and DPing a bunch, and so I'm very aware of kind of both sides of that coin. I've been in situations in which I've been a really terrible director to a DP, and I've been in situations when I've had a really difficult time with a director. I was on a shoot in which a director wanted foreground element in the shot, and it did not make any sense at all. And I couldn't understand, like, why do you want the foreground element? It's not like, I mean, if you want me to shoot like through block stuff, then that's fine. That's totally fine. I don't understand why you want it. And at the end of the day, he didn't know why he wanted it either, but he was just like, just do it. And that is a very toxic relationship between a director and a DP. There should not be a, I'm the boss, just do it. If you have to say that, you lost a long time ago. And so I think that, to me, is it's easy when you're the person in charge, when you're the person everybody's looking to kind of feel like you can start getting insecure if you feel like you should know all the answers, and that's not your job to know all the answers. Your job is to say, this is where we're going, and to say to certain people, how can we get to this point? I think kind of defensiveness, insecurity, all that kind of stuff. All the stuff that's not about filmmaking is what affects that relationship. It's not about the light, it's not about the camera, it's not about what lens you're choosing. It's all about, like, how is the relationship with the DP and the director, and are we going the same place? Does he trust me? Do I trust him? Like, can we get this thing done together, you know? So that's a really tough transition for any kind of new filmmaker to make. If you're just starting out as a filmmaker, literally the hardest part for anyone is, on any level, is the starting, literally getting started. The first thing you ever shoot, the first thing you ever write, the first thing you ever are a part of that you're like, this is my idea and I want to do it. I think the first step is the hardest part. And so a lot of times why people say write what you know or something like that is because that is the most successful way to start. For me, I came from a music background, I came from a photography background. Because I was doing photography, I had a space with a handful of guys, and we had a space. I had a music background, so I knew musicians. So when I was thinking, I want to try this filmmaking thing, I'm curious I feel like this might be a good fit for me, I used what I knew, and I got like the guys I knew who did filmmaking into my space with musicians that I knew. And that's how Serial Box ultimately kind of was born out of that. Serial Box is my write what you know moment, basically. And so I feel like for guys who are just starting out and for girls who are just starting out, that what are the things that you know more about? What are the things that you are most passionate, most interested in that someone else may not know, that someone may not have experience with? And I think it's really hard. It's easy to pass right over it, you know, and go like, I want to shoot Interstellar. My kid brother, like, who is like an incredible basketball player, like is going to be on a state basketball team this year. It's your kid brother, like who cares, whatever. But like not everybody has a kid brother who gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning to practice basketball. That's interesting to me. That's interesting. Like what you have access to him in this hypothetical situation, like at 4 o'clock in the morning. If you're interested in documentary production, like you got a great starting place. Start right there. Start right there with this thing that you have access to. Because it is such an uphill battle to make a film of any kind, whether that be a documentary, a narrative, a music video. It could be 60 seconds long. It's so hard to make them that I think that kind of like needing some help right out of the gate, you know, as you start out, a lot of that, I just think it's literally, whatever that thing is for whoever's watching this, is probably right under your nose. It's there, the building blocks and the starting things that you need are right in front of you. It's just a matter of kind of identifying and then making the first step.